So you see a car with a swivel seat and you think, hey, that's a neat little feature. Kind of like a luxury, right? Makes getting in and out easier. But what if I told you that the choice between a cheap 500 yuan turntable and a proper 8,000 yuan one isn't about comfort at all? No, it's about the terrifying difference between your seat staying put and your seat becoming a literal projectile during a crash. Yeah, we're going to get into this because this isn't just some cool gadget. It's a piece of safety gear that honestly most people get dangerously wrong. So first off, why even bother with these things? Well, think about it for a second. Picture an elderly family member, maybe your own grandma, trying to get into a modern car, especially an SUV. It's not a pretty sight, is it? It's this whole ordeal of bending way down, twisting your back in a way it's not supposed to, and then, dragging your legs in one after the other. It's more than just awkward. For millions of people, it's a daily, painful struggle. And the real problem? It's just how cars are built. And you could actually break that struggle down into three, let's call them deadly moves. First up is the bend. When you bend over like that, you're loading up your spine with 1.5 times your entire body weight. Ouch. Then comes the twist. You're basically torquing your hips anywhere from 60 to 90 degrees. And finally, you gotta do the leg lift, which takes over 100 degrees of knee bending just to clear the car's door frame. Now, if you're perfectly healthy, it's annoying. But for anyone with back problems, hip issues, or bad knees, this is a straight-up recipe for injury. Okay, look at this number. 23%. Just let that hang there for a moment. What do you think that could possibly be? We're talking about cars, so what? 23% of accidents happen in the rain? Nope, it's way more surprising than that. According to the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the big guys in car safety, a whopping 23% of traffic-related injuries for the elderly don't happen in a high-speed crash. No, they happen when they're not even moving. They happen during the simple act of getting in or out of the car, right in their own driveway. So we're not just talking about a little inconvenience here. We're talking about a massive, overlooked safety hazard. So the solution seems obvious, right? A seat that swivels. But here's where things get really, really tricky. You've got this fundamental engineering conflict, this dilemma. On the one hand, you need that swivel to be buttery smooth, right? Effortless, silky. But on the other hand, the second a crash happens, you need that exact same mechanism to be as strong and unmovable as if it were literally welded to the floor. Smooth as silk one second, solid as a rock the next. How in the world do you design something that does both? So let's break down what this thing actually is. A swivel seat mechanism, or a turntable, is basically made of three key parts. You've got a bearing that lets it spin smoothly, a lock that clicks it into place so you're not sliding around, and some safety interlocks to make sure it only moves when you want it to. Just think of it like a really, really smart and strong layer sandwiched between your seat and the car's floor. And this is the perfect way to think about that core conflict we were just talking about. Imagine one of those lazy Susans at a hot pot restaurant. You want it to be super smooth, zero friction, so you can spin it easily and snag that last piece of meat, right? Now, completely opposite of that, think about a climber's carabiner. You are literally trusting your life to that little piece of metal. It has to lock, period. No wiggle room, no compromise, especially under a ton of force. A car seat turntable has to be both. It has to be the hot pot spinner and the life-saving carabiner all rolled into one. So how strong does it need to be? Well, in a crash, that mechanism has to handle an instantaneous force of 20 G. Yeah, 20 times the force of gravity. It's a massive, violent hit. But what does 20 G even mean? It's just a number, right? It sounds big, but it's hard to picture. So let's make it real. 20 G is the same as having a 3,000 kilogram object slam into your seat. That's like a small elephant. Seriously. Imagine a frickin' elephant just appearing out of nowhere and smashing into your seat. That is the force that little locking pin has to withstand without snapping, without even flinching. And that is why a cheap turntable isn't just a bad purchase, it is a terrifying gamble with your life. Okay, so let's get our hands dirty. Let's do a teardown. What is the actual tangible difference between a 500 yuan knockoff and an 8,000 yuan factory-installed unit? And trust me, it's not just a brand name slapped on it. We are talking about fundamentally different approaches to engineering, different materials, and a completely different mindset when it comes to your safety. So, let's look at what's actually under the hood, so to speak. On the cheap end of town, you've got things like the gear plate and pawl. The good thing is, you get a nice, solid click when it locks. The bad thing? They get noisy and start rattling like crazy over time. A little more expensive is the friction lock. This one feels super smooth and premium when you first try it. But here's the trap. That friction wears down. And as it wears, the force holding you in place gets weaker. That's not good. Then you jump way up to the high-end stuff, like the ball bearing systems. These are the whole package. Dead silent, ultra smooth, and built like a tank. But yeah, that's where the cost comes from. You're paying for precision engineering that can be both silky smooth and elephant-proof. All right, listen up, because this is the most important part. This is your official scam prevention guide. If you're out there looking at cars or thinking about adding one of these later, you absolutely have to know the misleading sales pitches and the common myths. Let's talk about the 4 deadly traps that people constantly fall for.
So here's trap number 1, the idea that as long as it turns, it's fine. You see it all the time. Someone gets in the car at the dealership, spins the seat, it moves, and they go perfect. It works.
Nope. That is completely 100% wrong. The test isn't whether it can spin. The real test is whether it can instantly stop spinning and lock solid in a crash. Because if that lock fails, it doesn't just get a little wobbly. No, you and your entire seat become a massive, untethered projectile inside your own car. Okay, trap number 2, and this is a classic sales pitch. The smoother it feels, the more high-end it is. The salesperson will have you give it a spin and say, see, buttery smooth. That's quality right there. Wrong. Again. In fact, being too smooth can be a huge red flag. Often that feeling comes from loose parts and sloppy engineering, exactly the stuff that will start to rattle and fail a few years from now. Real quality is smooth for sure, but it also feels solid, engaged. You should feel a confident, crisp thunk when it locks into place, not just a slippery glide. And this brings us to the biggest, most dangerous trap of all, thinking you can save a ton of money by getting a cheap aftermarket turntable because it does the same job. This is not just wrong, it is incredibly dangerous. Here's why. 1, these cheap products are often made with inferior steel that can't handle the force. 2, they almost never go through the proper crash testing to prove they can survive that 20G impact. And 3, and this is the part nobody thinks about, if you get into an accident and that uncertified part fails, your insurance company might have every right to deny your claim. You try to save a few bucks and you can end up physically injured and financially ruined. It's just not worth the risk. So with all these traps out there, how do you make sure you don't get taken for a ride? Well, it's actually pretty simple. You just have to ignore all this sales talk about smoothness and focus on 3 key things. Write these down, remember them. This is your checklist. Here we go, your anti-scam checklist. Number 1, certification. This is the big one. Ask to see proof that it passed crash tests, like the ECE 17 standard. If they can't show you a certificate or give you a straight answer, you get up and you walk away. Period. Number 2, the locking mechanism. Look for a dual lock system. That's basically a backup to prevent it from ever coming unlocked by accident. And number 3, wire management. This is sneaky but critical. Remember, the wires for your airbags and seatbelt sensors have to pass through this spinning part. A cheap one can just shred those wires. A good one will have something called a clock spring to protect them. If those wires get cut, your airbags might not go off in a crash. Think about that. A catastrophic failure waiting to happen. And hey, one last quick pro tip that everybody seems to forget. Installing one of these turntables will raise your seat up by about an inch or 2. That's 20 to 40 millimeters. So before you commit, please actually sit in the seat and make sure your head isn't about to hit the roof. It's a simple check that can save you a lot of discomfort later on. Look, at the end of the day, this isn't about some flashy tech feature. It's about something much more fundamental. It's about dignity. It's about changing that awful experience of crawling into a car into the simple act of sitting in a car. It's about giving a family member the ability to get in and out with grace and without pain. And all that incredible engineering, all that talk about 20G forces and locking mechanisms, it all exists for one reason: to make that simple, smooth rotation possible, while ensuring that in the worst possible moment, that seat is the safest place to be. So I guess the real question you have to ask yourself is, what is that peace of mind and that dignity for your loved ones really worth?